it's hard to leave the LDS church. It's such an all-encompassing culture and experience. And it's hard enough for adults, but when family is involved, that's another layer of challenge and even more difficult sometimes. So when you leave as a parent and your kids are active in the church, and how do you explain that to them? And how do you process that together as a family? So we want to talk about a family that has, we're going to talk with a family that's been through that and get some of their insights from their experience about how that happened. So first of all, Mom, when did you realize that you needed to tell your kids about your faith process?
Well, my husband was born again before I was, and after he was, I had a born again experience, and we began studying church history and doctrine, and the more we learned, we realized it wasn't matching up with where we felt God was taking us, and we realized we were going to have to leave, and our first thought was, what about our kids?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? How are we going to tell them?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so how did you feel when they did decide to tell you? How did that affect you?
Well, I trusted Mom and Dad, and but it kind of made me think, well, why are they saying this? What's the change in them, and what makes them think that the church is, that they're saying something different than the church? What's going on here?
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you feel threatened or scared or anything, or just curious, or?
Curious, a little bit of anxiety maybe.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So how did you handle it? You knew you needed to bring the kids in on this. How did you actually go about handling that?
As we were learning, it was kind of a slow process. It was over several months, and we would drop little things to the kids as we went along, and we tried to be really careful that what we were saying wasn't really sarcastic or really harsh, and we just really tried to gauge where they were at, and to make sure we weren't plowing them over with too much information at one time. And it was hard because sometimes my husband and I felt like we wanted to tell them everything all at once and just tell them, you can't go anymore. We're done here. But we just both felt like the Holy Spirit was saying, you need to wait and be patient and to let them move at their pace. And I felt like the Lord said to me that if we weren't careful, we could lose their hearts, and it was important that they come out with us. Yeah.
Okay. So your mom is sharing one perspective of it, but what did you like or what did you not like about how your parents let you know? And as you look back on that, were there some good things they did, maybe some things that you wish they hadn't done?
Grateful. What I did like was that they were patient, and they didn't really force us or anything to
like to quit or to make any sudden decisions or anything.
They weren't demanding and pulling us out.
Okay. All right. So but is there anything that you didn't like about it?
It might have been, but I can't think of it at the moment.
Oh, great.
We were discussing before we came, and Bethany had mentioned that it was hard for her when my husband and I stopped attending church, and the kids were still going with neighbors were taking them, and that was felt
a little awkward.
Yeah,
you felt hard. Like a little, So people are thinking, what's wrong with your family?
What's going on?
Like maybe before, you're one of the kind of higher class Mormons, and then now you're kind of down lower, and you're like, oh, now I feel like what I used to look at somebody else and go, now I'm like maybe a little. Yeah.
Totally, that really makes sense. That would really make sense, because suddenly you're exposed to everybody's opinion and when they see what's going on in your family a little bit. Well, what advice would you give to other parents then, based on your experience and what you've learned?
I would emphasize to be patient and not to rush in too quickly, and to try to gauge where your children are at emotionally and how they're with the church, and to take that into consideration. And I know all situations are different, and some parents might have a different set of circumstances than we did. I feel like trust and communication with your kids are so important. And if your relationship with your children is not in a good place right now, it might be really good to work on that relationship. To help that communication go better as you're trying to talk to them about the church.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because the relationship is valuable anyway, regardless.
It is. It is. It's
work
really
on
important.
it. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
And so, what advice? Let's break it down into two things. First, what advice would you give to parents who have to say something to their kids, since you've been in that role? What advice would you give to parents first?
Well, I'd say that patience. You have to be patient with them, because the Lord was patient with you when you were wrong. So
yeah.
And for kids, that your parents love you and they want what's best for you, and they've been in the Mormon church longer than you have, and they may be able to see a larger effect on what it may do to a person than you have.
Yeah, good. So trust your parents. They can see a bigger picture than maybe you can in your limited experience as a young person. Okay, great. Anything else you guys want to add at all before we finish?
Maybe use this time. You may feel that your family is being divided, but use the time to connect with God and get into His Word and the Bible.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Good. That's good advice. So you know what? Probably some of you are in this situation, and this is super helpful to help you navigate that. It could be really challenging, I know. And so hopefully you've heard some things today that are encouraging to you. We just wish you pray for you that you're experiencing God's leading through this and His empowerment. He's there for you. And so hopefully this has been helpful for you as you've watched today. Thanks for tuning in.